Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to this congregation where we seek to foster community, to grow our spirits, to serve others, and to work for justice. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your background, we are glad you're here and hope you'll feel at home. Please join us after the service in the cafeteria for coffee and fellowship. Today, our guest speaker is Jim Harven. Bill Stroop was unable to make it today. He is not feeling well. Instead, we have our powerhouse, Jim Harven, and we are graced with his presence in our sacred space. And let us now enter into worship together. Our opening words this morning are from David Blanchard. Come down off the ladder. Wash out that paintbrush. Shake the sand out of your shoes. Get up off your muddy knees and give the garden a morning off. Fold up the newspaper. Turn off the coffee pot. Close up your calendar already filled with dates and times and people and places that claim you. This church is ready for you to fill its rooms, to create its spirit, to generate its warmth, to kindle its light. This church is ready for you to make community, to create beauty, to bend it towards justice, to serve its ideals. This church is ready for you to be here, honoring our past, invigorating our present, and dreaming our future. This is your church. Here we are home. Here we are whole. Let us begin.
You'll hear the piano play through the hymn once, and then feel free to join in on the second.
Good morning. Have you ever felt so small that you couldn't really make a real difference? I know I have. Yeah. Have you ever felt like you have to work so hard to make anything change even a little bit? I know I have. So this is a story about a little gardener who feels that way too. This was the garden. What do you notice? It's a garden. Is it impressive? No, not too impressive. Stuff. Is this a flourishing, rich, lush garden? Yeah. It didn't look like much, but it meant everything to its gardener. It was their home. It was their supper. It was their joy. Only they weren't much good at gardening. It wasn't that they didn't work hard. They worked hard, very, very hard. They were just too little. And the garden was too big. But there was one thing that did blossom in their garden. It was a flower. It was alive and wonderful. It gave the gardener hope and made them work even harder. They worked all morning. They worked all afternoon. They worked all night. Still, the garden was dying. They would have no home. They would have no supper. They would have no joy. One night, feeling tired and sad, the gardener made a wish. I wish I had a little bit of help. No one heard their little voice, but someone saw his flower. It was alive and wonderful. It gave the someone hope. It made the someone want to work harder. The next day, the gardener was weary, and they slept the whole day. They slept the whole week. They slept the whole month. And when they finally woke, it had been just long enough for something to change. This is the garden now. And this is its gardener. The gardener may not look like much, but they mean everything to their garden. So that's the end of the story. I wanted to ask you, what do you think caused the change in the garden? What do you think? What do you think, Lily? The someone made it happen. What do you think? The flower made it happen. Anybody else have any ideas? Grown, little? So sometimes we don't know exactly what caused the change, and that's okay. I read this story to you guys today because in our faith, we like to ask a lot of questions, and sometimes we don't know the answers to them, and that's okay. That's all I have today.
anyone could hear. In our hearts a hope-for song we barely understood. Now we are not afraid, although we know there's much to fear. We were moving mountains long before we knew we could. There can be miracles when you believe. Though hope is frail, it's hard to kill. Who knows what miracles you can achieve when you believe? Somehow you will. You will when you believe. Now in this time of fear, when prayer so often seems in vain, hope seems like the summer bird too swiftly flown away. Yet now I'm standing here, my heart so full I can't explain, seeking faith and speaking words I never thought I'd say. There can be miracles when you believe. Though hope is frail, it's hard to kill. Who knows what miracles you can achieve when you believe? Somehow you will. You will when you believe. They don't always happen when you ask, and it's easy to give in to your fear. But when you're blinded by your pain, can't see the wicked through the rain, a small but still resilient voice says hope is very near. There can be miracles when you believe. Though hope is frail, it's hard to kill. Who knows what miracles you can achieve if you believe? Somehow you will. Somehow you will. You will when you live. You will when you believe.
Thank you, Avi. My reading is by Joanna Fontaine Crawford called Every Third Thursday. Every third Tuesday, I am a Buddhist. I empty my mind and lighten my heart and try to let go of attachments. Every other Friday, I am a Christian. I look for the least of these, and I try to love God and my neighbor. The full moon of the month finds me Wiccan. I honor the dual nature of God and find my rhythm as maiden, mother, or crone. On the 15th of the month, I'm a humanist. I respect science, integrity of fellow humans, and all that we have learned and have made. Every fourth Wednesday, I am Hindu. I take a breath and understand that what is unfinished now will remain for me to continue next life. On alternative Fridays, I am Jewish. Yevarekaka Adonai Yevashmeraka. I hope I did it well. I tell my children softly, touching each head. And the Thursdays and the Mondays and the Saturdays and Sundays and all the other days in between find me reading or listening or watching. Philosophers, Muslims, Mormons, Baha'i, and more fill my heart, touch my soul, and yet the one thing that none of these provide to me is a certitude that they are the one. They lend me wisdom, sing to my heart, cause me to question, help me find answers, make me more. And at the end of the day, every day, I am Unitarian Universalist. In parcel and in pledge, and with all my heart and all my soul, all my mind and all my strength, I honor this faith, I hold it close, as it lets me run free. So unfortunately, Bill's not feeling well today, and he called me this morning and said, can you fill in? Of course, I said yes, but I've not even read these things yet, so please beg my forgiveness. And I tried to put on the Bill Stroop outfit, so hopefully I'll take some of that spirit with me. This is a sermon by Michael Brown called Faith is Not Belief. So this is not my sermon. This is my reading for Bill of a sermon that he chose. So it's kind of twice removed. Many of us have been asked at one time or another, just what is it that you Unitarian Universalists believe? And I admit this is a difficult moment, even for ministers like myself. One of the problems with this query is that the question itself makes assumptions that may not be true. In a way, it's one of those questions like, when did you stop beating your children? The hidden assumption here is that knowing what a person believes is the best way to understand and ultimately judge that person's religious life. And I, for one, find this assumption highly questionable. Although the Christian faith has held belief to be its most important element, belief does not play nearly so central a role in other major religions. The crucial elements in Judaism is obedience to the law, not belief. In Islam, the core of religious life is the observance of the 5 pillars, most of which are about doing particular things, not believing particular things. And in Zen Buddhism, belief would probably be considered irrelevant at best, and at worst an actual hindrance to the development, hindrance to the kind of clear consciousness which its spiritual practices seek to develop. So belief is certainly not universally recognized as a crucial element in religion or spirituality. It is true that questions of belief have been very important in the history of Christianity, especially since the adoption in 325 CE of the Nicene Creed, which specified exactly what a Christian would need to believe to remain a Christian. It is also true that questions of belief were not nearly so important in the Christian church prior to that time, when the fledgling and often persecuted religion was far more diverse and tolerant of different beliefs than it is now. Nevertheless, Christianity ultimately chose to use points of belief as a basis to include people in, as well as to exclude people from, its fold. It used belief to separate the sheep from the goats, to use a biblical metaphor. I think it's not unfair to suggest that elevating belief to such a high status has sometimes resulted in a rather harsh approach to religion, giving rise to the concept of heresy, and in worst cases leading to disasters like the Inquisition. That problem certainly merits further exploration, but at this moment I prefer to focus attention in a different direction. What I really want to talk about here is the difference between belief and faith. The difference between faith and belief would be a worthwhile topic for any person to explore, but I suspect it may be particularly important for those of us who are Unitarian Universalists. After all, we call ourselves a creedless religion, meaning that we don't have a specific set of beliefs that everyone must agree with. That's one of the reasons we have so much difficulty with the question about what we believe. Just as an aside, my friend and colleague Tony Larson claimed that we UUs have more beliefs than any religious group, since virtually everyone in any of our churches has his or her own complex set of beliefs. Be that as it may, I think that sometimes we may jump to the conclusion that because we don't have a creed set in stone, then it's also true that we have no faith. That would be an error of grand proportions. I want to propose, first of all, that faith and belief are not the same thing, and second, that faith is a dimension of life that is very accessible to Unitarian Universalists, as well as to other folks in other religious traditions, or even no tradition at all. I'm not interested in arguing that belief is a bad thing, although personally I find its value limited at best. If I had to choose between faith and belief, it would certainly be an easy choice for me. In fact, I've already made that choice in my life, and the winner is faith by a wide margin. I think that we as Unitarian Universalists have a strong, vibrant faith, even though, as a religious movement, we have made a very conscious decision not to limit that faith within the confines of a specific set of beliefs. This might be a good time to bring a couple of distinguished theologians off the bench to pinch hit, just so you know I'm not making this all up. Listen to these words from Wilfred Cantwell Smith, one of the most foremost historians of religion of the 20th century. Belief, he says, is the holding of certain ideas, but faith is something different. Faith is deeper, richer, more personal. It is engendered by religious tradition in some cases, and to some degree by its doctrines. But it is a quality of the person and not the system. I think that's the key distinction I see here. It is the quality of the person and not the system. It is an orientation of the personality to oneself, to one's neighbor, to the universe, a total response, a way of seeing whatever one sees and of handling whatever one handles, a capacity to live at more than a mundane level, to see, to feel, to act in terms of transcendent dimension. Faith, then, is a quality of human living. So belief is primarily the adoption of certain ideas or concepts, whereas faith, in Smith's view, is about our immediate response to joys and concerns of life day by day. So now listen to the words of James Fowler, who has written one of the modern classics on the subject of faith entitled Stages of Faith. He characterizes faith as our response to certain questions regarding our hopes and dreams, our commitments, and what we trust in life. He says, faith is not always religious in its content or context. So ask these questions seriously of oneself or others. To ask these questions seriously of oneself or others does not necessarily mean to elicit answers about religious commitment or belief. Faith is a person or group's way of moving into the force field of life. It is our way of finding coherence in and giving meaning to the multiple forces and relations that make up our lives. Faith is a person's way of seeing him or herself in relation to others against a background of shared meaning and responses and purpose. So from the point of view of these two thinkers, at least, faith is very different from belief, although they certainly may coexist in the same person. But faith is not primarily about adoption of a set of beliefs. Faith is about how we respond to the joys and challenges of our lives, day by day, moment by moment. It's about whom and what we love, about where we invest our time, our energy, and our allegiance. It's about whom or what we trust, and about how we respond in the face of difficulty and tragedy. In the words of another great 20th century theologian, Paul Tillich, it's about our ultimate concern. Or as Emerson put it, a person will worship something. The real question is, what occupies that place in our lives? My colleague Brooks McDaniel calls faith a kind of courageous trust. By that, I think he means that a person of faith is someone who moves forward in life, moves toward meaningful goals, trusting that his or her effort is worthwhile even in the face of difficulties, sometimes even in the face of serious doubts. These goals or ideals do not have to be concerned with getting to heaven or with any kind of other world or even with any organized religion. They may be more related to family or community or perhaps to developing a creative skill. They may be focused on the pursuit of justice or providing service to others, or they might be related to a love relationship. They may even be related to a religion, although that relationship is not required for it to be faith. Faith is a kind of stance that we take in relation to the totality of life. Crazy, beautiful, comic, tragic, painful, rewarding, puzzling, inspiring life. To be a person of faith is to affirm that within this amazing kaleidoscope of life experience, there is a meaning available, meaning discovered or created, personal or universal. Faith is taking the stance that somehow life is good, or at least good enough to be worth the struggle and the pain. Faith does not require that we be able to state precisely and ambiguously why that is. There is no unambiguously, I want to make that distinction. There is no law that says that we have to be able to do that. Faith can be open-ended. There's nothing wrong with that approach at all. Remember this, the admonishment of Tao Te Ching, the Tao that can be named is not true Tao or Tao. Carl Sandburg expresses this indefiniteness of faith so well in his words, I am an idealist. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm on my way there. What a great statement of the sense of idealism that is not tied down to a particular set of beliefs. Faith is a continuously unfolding creative process, whereas belief is all too often the tragic mistake of trying to contain that creative process inside narrow boundaries and not let it change and not let it grow. Of course, that limitation is death to creativity, and in the worst case scenario leads to oppression. I'm not saying that religious belief can't work well in a life of faith. Clearly they can. But the beliefs need to be of the type affirmed by the great religious educator Sophia Lyon-Fahs, gateways opening wide vistas for exploration, not like blinders shutting off the power to choose one's own direction. Belief needs to be flexible, open to question, or they can too easily become oppressive as well. Faith is not about choosing something to believe in and then hanging on for dear life. Faith lets go. Faith is trusting in the creative process of life. It is moment by moment, unpredictable, creative, open-ended, spontaneous, responsive, and responsible, yet always directed toward more joy, more beauty, more love, more compassion, and more justice. It doesn't need to be written down, and its secret cannot be memorized or recited on demand. The truth is not in the words, not in any formula, but in the experience, in the heart, in the moment-by-moment response to being alive. So if someone ever asks you, what do you Unitarian Universalists believe? You might say, ours is an open-ended, living faith, and then trust the creative process of life to let the dialogue grow and unfold as it will.
With
Marcellus.